Good evening and welcome to another error analysis class, week two. And in this PowerPoint, we'll cover about what is the difference between errors and mistakes. Okay.
So in this week, by the end of this week, you will be able to define error analysis. So you have to the understanding of what is error analysis. You can explain the historical background of EA or error analysis, whether in linguistics and in language teaching. You can also understand the importance of studying errors for learners, for English learners, and you can identify examples of learner errors in real context.
Okay, so let's just go straight away to what is error and mistake. So errors are systematic deviations from the rules of the target language. So it's about you have not comprehend any particular materials or subject matters, therefore you have done the errors. Or in this case, it says you have gaps in certain knowledge, or you have done incomplete learning of certain knowledge, therefore you make the error. Okay, example in Indonesian, when they learn for Indonesians, when they learn English, is she go to school every day. Now, this is in terms of because somebody hasn't learned about the subject verb agreement. Therefore, the person make the error. And therefore, we can conclude that this person has gaps in knowledge. The person hasn't even understand the subject verb agreement. Therefore, the error is completely noticeable. So the advice for Indonesian learners of English is to learn more and fill the gaps in certain knowledge that you have not understood, or something that you have not learned yet. And then mistakes in the other hand is when you occasionally slips in performance because you are tired, or just because you are distracted, or because you are just careless. Okay, and here you can just self correct yourself. So for instance, like somebody writes, I go to school, but immediately the person just recognizes and corrects that I went to school. Maybe it's something that slips from the person's tongue, or just because it's a human lack of mistakes, or because it's mistype. Next is what are the criteria to distinguish errors from mistakes? So, in terms of consistency, if the person repeatedly do the same particular mistake systematically, it is likely an error. But if it's only happens only once or twice, it is likely a mistake. In the case of self-correction, if the learner of English can notice and correct it directly, it means it's a mistake. But if the learner cannot correct it because they just don't know the rule, it means it's an error. Okay? Whereas in terms of the source, if because the person is incompetent, or the person have the gap in certain knowledge, it means it's an error. But if it's only because of the performance matter, just only a slip away in knowing or using the rules, it's a mistake. Okay, and there's another thing that I want to explain is the sources of errors for this week, for the second week. I mean, for the last meeting that we didn't have.
So in this week, by the end of this week, you will be able to define error analysis. So you have to the understanding of what is error analysis. You can explain the historical background of EA or error analysis, whether in linguistics and in language teaching. You can also understand the importance of studying errors for learners, for English learners, and you can identify examples of learner errors in real context.
Okay, so sources of errors can be because of the interlingual transfer. When there is an L1 interference, L1 is language one. So, for example, us, because we are Indonesian, our L1 is Bahasa Indonesia. So, interference from our Bahasa Indonesia very much affect the transfer of from Indonesian into English. Okay. So the error is caused by the influence of the learner's mother tongue, okay, as I explained before. For example, from Indonesian to English, she very beautiful. So we omit is, okay? Why? Because in Indonesian we don't have is. We just say she very beautiful. Dia sangat cantik. We don't need is here. Because if we, for example, we use is and is seldomly used as adalah. So we kind of say it like dia adalah sangat cantik, but in this case, because of the influence of the L1, it interfere with how we transfer the Bahasa Indonesia into English. On the other hand, there's also intralingual transfer. So intra means from outside. So errors from the target language itself or error from the L2 interference. So L2, which means in our case, it will be the interference of English that make us confused in how to transfer the language or the sentence from Bahasa into English because we are focusing on the target language. For instance, like in English, we have past tense. We learned about past tense so much. There are verbs in English that has uh, the form and types in terms of the tenses, for example, verb one, verb two, verb three, but we don't have that in Indonesian. And regular and irregular verb for past tense. For example, like I go becomes I went. We don't have that. We just have something that's similar in the case. We just say if we want to say something that's in the past, we just say yesterday, ya kan, kemarin, tadi, but we don't have something like go to went, or from repeat to repeated. You just have to add the the suffix ed at the end of the verb. So because we are very over general generalized those kind of rules in English, it just affect our brain. And then we started to apply the rule of past tense too widely. So we used something like I goed because we just know that ed means past tense. I goed, I run instead of I ran. Or in terms of like we in simplification, like in Indonesia, right? We kind of like reduce things that we don't need and we just omit it to make them easier for us to say or for us to write. Like in English, when we want to say dia pergi ke sekolah, we have to say it as he go to school. But two, in the case of Indonesian, is it's not necessary because we just want to say dia ke sekolah, right? He go school. Why do we need to add two? So we just want to simplify it. Again, this is an example of how certain languages either from L1 and L2 interfere with how we develop our brain to communicate well in English. And also another sources of errors is from the developmental errors. So developmental errors are related to how we as human from the early stage of learning language, we kind of like learn it um, previously in our life as something different. And then in the stages of learning that we kind of comprehend them um, differently towards the stage where we are adults right now. So it also well, when I was little, when I was a baby, my first language, well, not a baby, but when I was little, my first language was Indonesian, Bahasa. And then when I studied in Australia, I kind of shift my L1 into English, and it affects how I speak Bahasa back then. And then when I go back to Indonesia again, there's a certain capabilities that I lost and I gained, but then all of these from L1, L2, and then switch to L1, L2 confuses me sometimes when I want to talk, when I kind of like think again about my vocabs, about what is necessary to be said. It all affects and just blurred up my mind again. And I remember my child, these days, everyone's kids. They watch a lot of YouTubes, and I'm guessing that all of these English, learning all these English are from YouTube. So my kids pick up something like I don't know, I don't know. Like you just have to say I don't know, but in terms of speaking, it's incorrectly. I don't know, but it's I don't know. I don't know. Okay, and sometimes no need, no need. And academically speaking, it's not correct, right? It's some kind of I would say it's a very hard thing to distinguish between error and mistakes because sometimes they just say it like that repeatedly, but sometimes when I tell them the correct way of saying that, they tend to change it instantly. So I hope that it's quite clear for you for the sources of errors. And you have two assignments that you have to submit on Thursday. The first one is that you look at the text in class activity A from errors and mistakes PPT just before. That was for classroom exercise. You can look at the text and you have to find if they are interlingual transfer, um, or there are in interlingual transfer or developmental error in the text. Okay, and what are your explanations to your findings? You just have to say and justify why you think they are interlingual transfer error or interlingual transfer error, or are they developmental error, sorry. And your assignment two is you have to collect 5 real examples of L2 errors from friends. So L2 errors, which means English errors, yeah? 5 real examples of English errors from your friends' online post, from any of online posts. You can collect from your own writing in your post also, and then you must classify them as interlingual, or maybe it is developmental error. And please screenshot um, your please screenshot your findings or your post that you found and justify why you think that those examples, or maybe those 5 examples have different kind of uh, error sources. So you want to justify why you think that example is interlingual, or maybe intra or developmental error. So I guess that's it.